Rasmus, first of all, thank you so much for making time on a Saturday, on a sunny Saturday, as we can see also on your screen, and also on short notice. So thank you so much for doing that. It's really much appreciated.
I'm really looking forward to this debate, and I really think it's a good project. So I'm really happy to join.
Super. And I think we should directly dive in. So before you joined, we had around 2 hours of event and also of discussion. We were kicking off the 6th round of the European HomeParliaments, and now it's time to debate and to reflect, and we're really glad that you're here. Just to let you know how we will proceed. So we were discussing one overarch or like an umbrella question and 3 very concrete proposals. We had very controversial discussions, as we will see also looking at the results. And I think we will just dive in and then question by question move forward. And in general, we're super interested in your perspective, Rasmus, and also then I want to give the floor also to you of the participants. If you have thoughts, if you have questions that you will also raise to Rasmus. So I want to quickly introduce you. You're part of the group of the Greens. You're a member of Bündnis 90 Die Grünen. You're a very active member of the European HomeParliaments, of the European Parliament. You're also very visible with your work. That's super nice. And you're a member of the Committee on Budget and Economic Affairs. But in general, an European parliamentarian has a lot of topics on the radar. So maybe before we dive in, hello, and how are you?
I'm fine. Actually, as I mentioned before, I'm really looking forward to our debate. I think that some of the questions you already have discussed are some of the key questions we are dealing with at European level right now, both in the Parliament, but also in the Council and the Commission. So this is what I really think is one of the topics important to discuss. And I also like the idea of having like a home parliament where things like the controversial topics also are being discussed on a very direct level, as I understand. So this is really what I think we need much more of in Europe, especially now where we are in a big debate also about the future of Europe and how to maybe also change, have some more structural changes also to the European project, so that the EU will end up be much more sovereign and stronger than in the past.
Yeah, and right. And with the conference on the future of Europe, we just had a big ongoing, maybe also project on that.
Yes, and now the question is how to organize the next steps, right? We had like a lot of panels there, I'm sure many of you know, and now the big question is, are we going further with it, or are we stopping the project or the process now? And the Parliament last week, actually with a broad majority, called for a convent where like also treaty changes can be discussed in a more institutionalized way, and now it's up to the member states if they want to follow the Parliament, or if they are, as some of them at least are, sometimes more reluctant to go in this direction. And I think initiatives like the one here are very important to strengthen some of the debates. We also want to see like in the bigger picture and at the level of a convent, for example.
Maybe before we dive into the first question, are you, because you were mentioning this vote last week and a majority of the European Parliament backing this proposal, what's your stand, or are you optimistic that the Council will follow, or what's your stand on this?
The figures are saying that it will be a very tight vote, and now I'm a German citizen and part of the Greens and part of a government party in Germany, where I know that at least also the foreign minister and the minister for European affairs is pushing hard together with, for example, France and some other countries to get a convent where treaty changes also will be debated. And recommendations has to be agreed. But on the other side, and I guess you are all aware of this, we have a lot of countries struggling with it, like some of the Eastern European countries or also the Nordic countries, more reluctant to follow and to have a convent where this will be discussed, because basically a lot of member states don't want to have any kind of treaty changes. So this will be very tough, I think, and nobody knows if there will be a majority at the end for a convent. I mean, the convent is like the next step, right? We want to have it to discuss possible structural changes for the European project. This doesn't mean that we will end up getting some, but at least I think right now we should have a convent and we should have the debate, and then afterwards we will see if we could agree on something or not. But I think it will already be quite hard to get it passed, a convent passed.
Thank you a lot for that perspective and that insight and this tight race. So let's have a look at the first question. I think you should see the screen, everyone. Yes, so the overall overreaching, the umbrella question is, must the EU become more sovereign and assertive on migration, security, and energy policy? So 3 also very timely, maybe also very controversially discussed questions. And the first one is, should eligibility for asylum in the EU already be examined and decided outside of the EU? And then we have in the background text some more like concrete backing for this proposal, some pros and cons. And what I think was super interesting, also hearing a little bit about the, or from the parliaments, as you can see, we had very mixed groups. Yeah, the average of the citizens or of everyone who participated today, it's a very mixed picture. So basically it's 50-50. We had a lot of strong pros and a lot of strong cons, and basically 50% being very supportive. Others don't think it's a really good idea to check applications already outside of the territory of the EU. So what's your stand on such a proposal? And are you sort of surprised by the voting, or maybe it's following also the feeling you're having?
Let me first of all understand the figures. So
yeah, good point.
A higher rate means
sorry,
agreement or disagreement?
Right, so there's a scale from 0 to 10, 10 meaning I love this idea, and 0, it's totally trash, we should get rid of it. And yeah, basically on that scale.
Okay, well, I think I'm not surprised that the answers may have been different, because this is like one of the questions I would say were being discussed much more controversial also in the parliament, for example, or in the council. So this is like something which is very complicated to discuss, right? Everything related to asylum questions, migration is very complicated. You have some heated debates, you have quite different national audiences on this. I mean, as I said before, I'm German, but I'm also half Danish, and also from the 2 countries I know best, Germany and Denmark, the debate is quite different in the countries, with like much more skeptical approach in Denmark, for example, and in Germany you have like also controversial debate about this. but much more like open-minded for European solutions when it comes to the general perspective. When it comes to the concrete question, I'm skeptical that this is a good idea, because if we are having a closer look on which states we actually are discussing this with, we have to collaborate with, then we are dealing with states like Turkey, other states where we can't be sure that they are following a humanitarian approach. And from a humanitarian perspective, and I always think that on migration issues we need to take like a humanitarian perspective, I'm quite skeptical that a collaboration or an intensified collaboration with states like Turkey, but also like Libya and so on, can be a good solution, and something where we can ensure that the human rights perspective will be followed. So this is one of the reasons I think why this is quite complicated, and why I'm not like in favor of it. And the other question is also from a legal perspective. There are some problems if like this has to be organized in states outside of the EU, especially when we are taking a broader perspective. You can maybe find some solutions with some of the Balkan countries, but with others it could be also from a legal perspective could be quite complicated. So this is why I'm not in favor of a solution like this, and I fully agree there also with the perspective of my political group and also of a broad majority in the European Parliament.
No, thank you a lot, Rasmus. Maybe to bring in the perspectives also of our participants. We heard a lot how this might be complicated, legally tough, maybe not a good idea also from a human rights perspective. I think in the parliaments, in the home parliaments, also had people who sort of liked the idea or saw some advantages in that approach. Is anyone here that wants to bring in that perspective and maybe wants to share some ideas or arguments why this could be an interesting approach?
I would maybe just put in context the results of our vote. With basically, there is always a large margin of the interpretation of the question. Our interpretation was actually beside the acceptance of asylum in the EU, because people are still going to arrive, to offer a more ordered possibility to ask to seek asylum action in the place where there are. So as integration of the system already existing and widening the possibilities of seeking asylum. And in that sense, there was a 6.3. Otherwise, there would have been a less positive view on the voting, just to put it on context. But we see the organizational problems as well that actually were just pointed out. So just some thoughts.
And maybe as you were writing in the chat, just as a backup, it still says Italy, Arturo Italy. You were a Danish, German, Italian group, so quite mixed. It's
yeah, let's say that the implicit message was that we are all European, and this brackets with nations purpose of Europe, and maybe we can
So let's now jump from Italy / Switzerland, where you are right now, to Balázs. You were the moderator of the Hungarian group.
Yes, indeed. And this question generated a very interesting discussion, because obviously our personal experience and the kind of political dimension of this question is very strong in Hungary. And what we talked about, and what was quite interesting to see, the humanitarian side of this question, because if these applications are being determined outside the border, then the conditions might be completely different than in the EU. Because in the EU, there's a chance that humanitarian groups or activists may be able to help them. And in these kinds of areas, these transit zones, they will get the kind of medical assistance, and these organizations can help them. Another dimension of this was related to human trafficking and how would this new legislation impact human trafficking. We kind of decided that this would be a huge issue if it stays like this or changes, because it might incentivize people to come to Europe regardless of being benefited from or not from the asylum status. So this is what we discussed, and I think both are very important dimension and aspect of any kind of future legislation in this dimension.
Thank you a lot. So super. So we heard it's yeah, I really like that you brought in those ideas or perspectives, and I want to directly hand over to Uwe. Oh, please unmute yourself so we can hear you. I think you have to try it once more. Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
Excuse me.
Perfect.
I forgot to switch off my. So I belong to the Darmstadt group, and we ended up with different, each other contradicting issues. First one is that every country, and also the EU, should normally need some orders and some information, who is coming in and who is what kind of needs it has, and also it needs how many people come in. So there is not an unlimited capability to accept people. This is one hand. The other hand is that in many cases, if people are coming, they are not really conditions which allow such a proposed procedure concerning asking somewhere for asylum, and especially in the Ukrainian case, when the really war is taking place, there's no order and no real procedure at all, and one has to solve it, at least in a very spontaneous way. And third topic we also addressed a little bit, that apparently we have in the acceptance of the populations, there are at least two different kinds of refugees. One, on the one hand, the Ukrainians, on the other hand, also the other refugees coming from Africa or from the Orient. So this is also a question which you could not solve, but it's also a matter of fact that also the EU should find some measures to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. And maybe to close this first question section, I want to hand over to you, Rasmus. Uwe was just mentioning, and we were discussing it before, like working on that question, if this could be a question. At the moment, a lot of people have the feeling, you know, we're like this one group from the Ukraine, we're giving them easy access, special rights, it's going all super fast, and everyone else is treated that the same way. What do you think about that? Is this okay? Are you surprised that it happened that way? Yeah, because it's like very controversially discussed.
Yeah, I mean, I fully see the point. From my perspective, the most important thing to do right now is to help the people coming from the Ukraine. I mean, right now we are already in a different situation, right? People are going back, especially looking on it from a German perspective. People are actually leaving Germany again. Many are, and so the situation is different there, and the context is also like a little bit different because of the war, and that things already had changed also since February. But people also can go back right now if they want to, right? I mean, we don't know about the next weeks and months, but right now it seems like in some parts of Ukraine you can go back if you want. But I also think that there are many people are making a difference there, because like the Ukraine is a European country, you have like more or less, it's not so far away. You have like not the same issues with cultural differences and so on. But my feeling is that the way we are threatening the Ukrainian people coming to us are a good example that we can, first of all, handle a situation like this, and first of all, also that we have the strong solidarity and strong support also for a lot of the people coming from the Ukraine. And I would wish that this also could make possible for people coming from other parts of the world, because they are facing some of the same problems like people in Ukraine are doing right now, because there is a war in their country. So my feeling is that we could learn a lot from how things are being organized right now. But from my perspective, there are also a lot of good examples for like back in 2015 and 16, where also like the civil society did a lot, but at the level especially of the state leaders, of the politicians who are making the decisions, I think it's really important that we should remind them that the way we are dealing with people from Ukraine could also be a good way and a good solution for refugees, for dealing with refugees in general.
I like a lot that you were also emphasizing the opportunity or the learning aspect. That's very precious. Thank you a lot. I think we should jump right into question number 2, a topic that is also recently discussed in like different variations, but the variation we were focusing on is the question, should the EU undertake operations in other countries with its own army in order to stabilize and pacify them? And we were especially looking here at the, chain or this huge change that is happening due to the Russian invasion in Ukraine. There are already peacekeeping missions that the EU is doing, but maybe we need one step further, and finally an EU army, and that is not only protecting EU member states and maybe or Europe, but also could also go or be part of stabilizing and peacekeeping missions. And maybe also in the background text, there was a little bit or some background on how this could be structured, and that also this European army can only act if all those, or if all 3 EU institutions, so the Council, Commission, and Parliament, sort of agree. Here it was really interesting looking at the results that a majority of people were critical about it. There was only one group, the YEF Austria /International group, that was in favor of it, but all the other groups didn't like the idea so much. So I would be super interested, Rasmus, what's your stand on it? Is there an EU army ahead of us? Would this be a good thing or not? And then also from the perspective of the participants, why are you so critical about it? But Rasmus, let's start with you.
Well, actually, I read in the chat that some groups at least came up with different figures in the chat than in your slide. So I don't know if your analysis still is correct, but I can start out with my perspective. I think this is really hard to answer, because my feeling is that it's a theoretical debate. And I think it's really important to take discussions like this and to have like to also get like different positions on this and to develop some thoughts. But from a concrete perspective, my feeling is that we are dealing right now, the biggest problem is not that we are having like an EU army, but that we are missing like a common defense and foreign policy. And this is what we need to start with. And this should be the first step. And this means we need to kill the anonymity decisions in when it comes to foreign politics. This means that we need to strengthen also European diplomatic forces to deal with this, and then I would say EU army could be like the next, the second or the third or the fourth step in the development of the common European foreign and defense security policy, but not the first one. But we are always discussing the first one. Then a lot of people are concerned and afraid because, for example, in a German context, everything related to military defense is not very popular to debate. And then there are a lot of opposition there in some Scandinavian countries. It's not like you don't want to give like a lot of competence to the European level, and then the debate is killed by that and so on. And this is why I think we really need to take smaller steps in this direction first. And I'm coming from a party which actually has a very interesting history when it comes to like foreign policy and defense policy, and we have always been quite skeptical about defining defense policy, especially through military forces. But there are some reasons also in Germany where that this had changed already a lot. But I'm just wanted to say that in a consequence, if we want like to have a stronger EU, if we want to have European sovereignty, if we want not to be dependent on which president may have the majority in the US, then we have to develop us on this. And this means that, of course, we also need to take this debate. And in the consequences would also mean that a European military force would be like part of the solution. But as I said, there are other steps we need to take before.
Before I open the panel for everyone else, you were mentioning that unanimity, so everyone in the council has to agree, and you basically have, you all have to agree, or you have, or you can veto a situation. Do I remember it right that the European Parliament agreed last week or 2 weeks ago on getting rid of it?
Yes.
Okay, so there is sort of, we're moving towards changing this. I mean, if the council agrees.
Yes, and I mean, this is what we are proposing for key areas, and the foreign policy is part of it. Some other economic questions, there it is the same. I know that this is especially sensitive in a lot of smaller European countries, because a lot of them are afraid of that this means that Germany and France will decide even more, not just like informally, but also like by having enough votes with some other countries, of course. And I fully see that point. And I really think as an elected member of the European Parliament from Germany, we really need to be aware of that. This can't mean that like Germany should decide everything. But on the other side, having one or two countries blocking everything or close to everything because of maybe other reasons. We had like this debate on the economic stuff right now, where Viktor Orban, for example, blocked the sanction package because of the rule of law issues. Poland blocked the OECD tax agreement because of the rule of law issue. This is not something I think can work on a long-term perspective, and this is why we need like to kill the anonymity. But of course, we need still to find solutions where not just some smaller, some few bigger states are deciding everything, then it won't work. And there are also a lot of issues where, for example, Germany is the one blocking development. But having like anonymity means that we can't fulfill a strong role in a global context, because we always have one country blocking a big majority.
And sometimes it's needed to be fast and strong and react.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to open now the panel on the issue of an EU army, on playing maybe a peacekeeping role, a stabilizing role. And I want to bring in Peter. He's part of the Pulse of Europe team from Berlin.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Yeah, and Rasmus, I'm totally in line with your thinking of first changing the foreign policy, then also stopping the vote, the veto principle in the council, and then thinking of a EU army. But looking right now into what is happening in the Ukraine, and it looks like by the sheer brute force of the Russian army, the Ukrainian army is losing every day territory and losing many people. I'm wondering whether this kind of very orderly approach, this three-step approach, will come in time, because right now it's all about sustaining the military capabilities of the Ukraine army. And some governments are very reticent to help. Some are talking much about it. And it's also some kind of a problem in some countries when it comes to Germany, because Germany is seen as being very slow in helping, really helping versus talking about it. And there's a word called Scholzen now in the public debate, saying that he's talking a lot about helping and about heavy weapons, but they don't arrive, at least not in time. So I was wondering whether this kind of three-step approach you are proposing is helping the Ukraine right now.
So we learned a new word, Scholzen, and we're Scholzing a little bit. So because I will bring in Arturo and then we will hand over to Rasmus.
Well, thank you. Let me do I think that I should have done before. Thanks to you also, Martin, for the overall organization, and Rasmus for the time. I think it's really interesting to do this discussion also because I discovered a little bit what were the different opinions and people also not being so politically engaged, which is basically Europe is in a good amount also about idealism. And in this question, I was surprised that there is also kind of resistance, because there is also, it's about idealism, believing that Europe is about something different than the force of armies, and that this is the founding principle of the European Union. And so I think this is actually explains why the results are also not, even for an organization that tends to be in favor of a strong European integration, are so reticent, because there is another idealism fighting against it. Then, of course, we had also Mange-Denska in our group. It's also about who decides what, how we lose then sovereignty in the sense of a common European army. One comment just to the fact of Scholz, and I think there is actually a very difficult situation there, and I think that Europe was actually fast in acting in this particular situation, because we simply use other weapons, other warfare, which is about economical warfare, for example. I mean, the war is being played also about Ernährungssicherheit, so about the what we're going to eat. And what Rasmus said, I agree perfectly. It's one of the steps, and in other steps we should be move faster, and we've done it with Ukraine. And weapons have always also unpleasant collateral effects. We can call it collateral effect. I think on the other warfare aspects, Europe in this case was able to act fast. Just a short comment, sorry, this was not wished, but I couldn't restrain myself.
No, it was very appreciated. Thank you. I mean, this format is all about debating, sharing perspectives. And maybe as we have such a good flow, we add Armin and then hand over to Rasmus. And Armin is from Dresden, so we're really diverse today.
Originally, I'm from Frankfurt, but I live in Dresden.
Okay, good.
For 25 years now. Yeah, what I wanted to add first to the comment, to the other comment before, I think we must not mix up strategy and tactical behavior. The strategy, what we want to achieve on the long run, we have to think about. And our group, the impression was that even the strategy is not clear. And the strategy, of course, will be influenced by what happens in the Ukraine. But this is not a Ukraine discussion. This is a European discussion. What do we want to achieve in the long run in terms of self-defense? Yes, no, maybe, whatever. How to support Ukraine short term has nothing to do with strategy. This strategy discussion would have had happened years ago, but it did not happen. The other topic, what we believe is an own European army is not the right solution. We have the NATO, we have a lot of national armies, but we have to improve the integration of all these armies and the collaboration of all these armies to strengthen the force. And we have to find the way forward how the European, I don't know the English word for Beistandsklausel, maybe the English word for Beistandsklausel, maybe somebody can translate it, which was not very well known to everybody before the Ukraine war, and now suddenly everybody knows. And how is this linked to the NATO activities? And this has to be discussed much more, also in the strategic component. So our view was definitely own army, not, and even less for the arguments which were brought on this paper here to improve the democracy in other countries. This sounds like Kreuzzüge. So this we don't support at all. But we have to enforce the integration of the existing armies and the collaboration between the European Beistandsklausel, whatever this is in English, and the NATO activities.
No, super. Thank you a lot, Armin. I want to hand over now to Rasmus and just say you were talking about the EU Treaties Article 42.7, and basically it calls for somewhat an obligation of aid and assistance in case of an attack. So, Rasmus.
Yes. First of all, maybe on the sovereignty question, I know it means a lot in a lot of national debates on this question. What my feeling is that we can't, there is like no national sovereignty any longer when it comes to foreign policy and security. You can, I mean, there is like, and I fully understand this, like in many member states, strong feeling of how important this is. But looking on the big global conflicts we are facing, there is like, this is not possible to organize it on a national level alone. And from my perspective, this is also the reason that there had been like a fundamental change, for example, from Sweden and Finland. I don't know if some of you are from Finland to Sweden, wants to join the NATO, still waiting for the decision, but with a clear mandate on that they want to join. And for the Danish colleagues here in the call, also the vote you had, the referendum you had on the Forbehold, joining with a very broad majority the defense cooperation at European level is a clear sign of that things are changing a lot, and that citizens are even also understanding this quite well, and maybe even more than some of the political parties, maybe more reluctant to change their positions. So this is like something where I think we can see lot of developments going on right now, which doesn't mean that we need to end up with a common European defense force, common European military. That's not the point. You can organize it differently, and some of you mentioned maybe also more realistic next steps on how to deal with this, right? Like strengthening the collaboration and so on, which is much more realistic, because we can't wait for the, even if we are in favor or are against it. And I know especially in Denmark, the debate had played a strong role, also especially from the ones opposing the referendum or the yes in the referendum. but at least more collaboration is needed, and then we will see in which direction collaboration goes and what this actually means in 10, 15, 20 years where we are on this. But organizing it in a national way and thinking that you have like the sovereignty now by deciding something on a national level, that's not the case. And that's not the case in NATO, in the NATO, for example. And with the NATO, I'm a bit more skeptical, because there you still have like also high dependency on the US, and it's fine to collaborate with the US. We need a strong collaboration with the United States, no doubt about that. But you don't know where the country is in 2 years, and who will be the next president of the United States. Now, I read actually half an hour ago news about that Joe Biden, there are rumors saying he's not running again. There are rumors on the other side that Trump is running again. You don't know what will happen there. And this is why I think we really need to prepare that we could end up in a situation where we can't rely on the US any longer. And this is what we need to do now, because I mean, the elections are, and the presidential elections are in 2 years. And there I really think we need to prepare different scenarios. It's better with the US, and I don't want to break that up. I want to be clear there, but if it's not possible, and if they are breaking the collaboration, then we need to be prepared. The other one is on the Ukraine. I would say the Ukraine is a good example, showing us on which topics and which areas we really need to work on at the European level. And I think the next question is also a good example for this. We can discuss this later, but this is what I want to say. I mean, we need to do a lot on a short-term level for the Ukraine. And I really agree on that Germany, for example, had not done enough. And I really agree also when it comes to economic help and to other elements that we still need to do much more. And we really need to be strong there. We really need also to take it serious, their application of getting the EU membership, being part of the European Union. But this doesn't mean that we can't do something else, and we can't like discuss some of the topics on the European military collaboration, let's put it like this, and some other issues linked to this. I think we need to do both, and something is more on a short-term level, and some other elements are more on a long-term perspective, but both are important.
Before we get to the next question, you were already hinting on a bit, and energy is quite a key towards European sovereignty. I want maybe give this floor and space to Ida, if she likes, because she's from the board of YEF Denmark, and we just heard about this change of debate and maybe atmosphere concerning security questions in Denmark. Maybe Ida, you want to bring in your perspective and inform us what's going on in Denmark and what does it mean for all of us?
Thank you. I believe that Rasmus said it quite well, since he also knows a lot about what's going on in Denmark. But yes, as he said, that we had the referendum, and the majority voted yes, which I was personally very happy about. But I personally voted no, or if you could say so, for this question, because the yes sides, one of their arguments was that this army, that there is a discussion about the EU, would never happen. And I believe that it would be a big deal for Denmark, because sovereignty is a very, very personal matter to the Danes, and it's the main reason why we have all these opt-outs. One of the main arguments to vote yes was that we wouldn't lose any sovereignty if we voted yes for this. So I'm personally very happy to be part of the cooperation as it is now, and I believe, as that was also argumented, that we should integrate our armies more, but it should not be a question of a EU army. This is something that we should rely more on NATO for. So yes, and I generally agree with you as well, Rasmus. So thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you for this perspective from Denmark, and we will now get to the last question, and I will give me a second, share my screen again. Here we are. This was all about energy. I hope the numbers are right. We have some numbers missing. Maybe Hungary had numbers, but I at a certain moment had to make the screenshot, and we had a team from Germany that had a didn't like the question so much, or it was too broad and not concrete enough to be answered properly. That's also understandable. So the question was very generic, but maybe at the same time nice. Should new buildings and major house renovations in the EU that do not integrate renewable energies, solar, wind, geothermal, etc., no longer be permitted? So do we need more tough measures to bring change, and maybe we just don't permit projects that aren't energy efficient enough? Rasmus, do we need such tough measures, just forbidding people to do those projects if they aren't green enough?
To keep it easy, I would say yes, because we are dealing with a big energy transition right now. And I think, and I mentioned this some minutes before, that on the overall picture, with a high dependency on fossil fuels in nearly all of our countries, with a high dependency on Russian fossil fuels in a lot of European countries, especially also in Germany, where I'm from, but also a lot of other countries some of you are coming from, the dependency on fossil fuels are quite high, and especially also from Russian fossil fuels. And I think it's really good that we are all agreeing on, at the European stage right now, more or less, that we want to get rid of Russian energy. But from my feeling, this means that we need to do more to get rid of all fossil fuels, because besides of security questions, we are also dealing with a big other crisis, the climate crisis, and there we really need to do much more, and to reach the climate targets we have agreed on an international level, and also in the EU. And this means that we need to do more, and we need to become more concrete in different kind of sectors. This means that from an energy perspective, we need to invest much more in renewables. We need to do much more there. But we also need to have a look on other sectors, like transport, for example. I'm dealing in the parliament with a law with the maritime industry, for example, or about the maritime industry. And the building issue is a big issue to reach the targets we had agreed on. And this means also that we need some regulation there to ensure that things also will happen, because we know that the industry will not do it by just asking them to do it. And this is why I think we need some strong regulation. And then, of course, the situation is different from country to country, and of course we need to take that into account. And we also need to have the social dimension in it, right? This means that if people who are living in some buildings which are not isolated in the same way, they have higher costs, but they are also maybe having a high income, but a small income, then of course we need to take that into account, and we need to develop solutions also that people with from low income households, for example, that they are not sitting at the end with bills they can't pay. But from a more general perspective, I would say yes. And your question is even linked to new buildings. And from my perspective, it should be targeted for the industry and not for the people afterwards using the buildings, right? Living in the buildings. So this is why if I wouldn't just had one word I could answer the question with, I would have said yes, but of course it's a complex issue and it will take a lot of years, that's for sure.
A really interesting remark also on who should pay for it. You were mentioning another very, very important aspect, and that's that we're looking at the topic from country to country from a different angle. And I think that was also reflected in the European Home Parliaments we had today. And maybe if Melissa and Balázs, you want to share a little bit your perspective, because we've seen in Melissa's group, an international group organized by Jeff Kratz, that you were more in favor of it. And from Balázs, the Hungarian group didn't like this strict approach so much. Maybe Melissa and Balázs, maybe Melissa, yeah, why do you like it?
Yeah, sure, I can start. So in our group, it was actually very polarized, because we had 2 people who voted 10 and 2 people who voted 2 and 3, and 1 person who didn't really want to answer the question. So it was extremely polarized. The 2 people who voted, who were not really agreeing with it, I was one of them, so I can share my perspective, which was that it was a bit too focused on the individual and kind of punishing the households that were not always able to, like, financially it has a cost, and the cost is probably going to be for the individual people and the households. But actually, the people who were for it, 2 of them were the other Austrians, because in Austria, it is already the case. Oil, yeah, I think Markus said that oil heating was already banished and forbidden in Austria. And there was currently a discussion on doing the same for gas. So I think that's why they were saying that it was a good idea. And then we had also all of us, even the ones who were saying that we're voting against, were all saying that we had to do something for climate. So I think the main reason why we have such a high score was because we're like, yeah, if it's not this, it needed to be something else, but we need to start somewhere.
Good point. Okay. Thank you a lot, Melissa. Handing over to Hungary, what was going on in your group, and maybe why are you looking at the overall number a little bit more skeptical about it?
Sure. I think we also had this kind of division, very pro and someone voting 1. I think this comes down to kind of 2 aspects. One was about the correlation between regulating and incentivizing. What people didn't really like is the very strict regulating mechanism. Instead, what they kind of preferred is incentivizing those constructions that are prioritizing renewable energy. Because by regulating, you can put additional costs on the buyers and also on the constructors, which would then might turn into something that people will say, okay, this is because of EU regulation, further playing into the Eurosceptic dynamic and polarization of the Hungarian people and how they are perceiving these new regulations. On the other hand, we all agreed that new renewable sources and constructions are needed, because that is the way forward, that is a sustainable way. But what we talked about is, rather than the building and renovating, we should talk about how we could make houses sustainable, that in dire circumstances, we don't have to pay that a lot of bills for the energy. So instead of building houses that are plainly based on renewable energy or partly, somehow restructuring our housing systems that they are more strong against the very intense heat or the cold as well. So this was kind of our ideas. We kind of went into debates about the Hungarian terminologies and Hungarian debate about how much energy costs and how frustrated people are with the energy prices. But I think these two dimensions kind of captures of what we talked about.
Thank you a lot for that full and comprehensive picture. We're coming towards an end. Maybe I want to give briefly the floor to Armin to close that question in a way. Yeah. And maybe let me say that I also heard it from different groups that also the question itself was in a way a little bit criticized because it's maybe too generic, or there are different angles, or it's yeah, so we were listening to that carefully. Maybe there are ways to optimize that question a bit, but also it's the nature a little bit of the European home parliaments to not always have the perfect approach, but also an approach that leads to a good and maybe also a little bit controversial discussion, but that keeps up and fires the discussion. Armin, what do you want to bring in?
And that was exactly the point I wanted to mention. So we were the group who have not given a vote for this, exactly for the reason because two completely different topics were mixed up: the sovereignty and the green energy. They were mixed up in one question. Energy sovereignty, yes. Green energy, maybe also yes. But two topics which are not linked to each other originally. In a potential solution later, yes, there might be a solution, but these are two totally different topics. And in addition, maybe that's only a German topic, into the green energy and gives the permission for building houses. I think the German government has killed any trust in what they are doing by killing the KfW 55 overnight without pre-warning. So this is not the way forward. You can build trust into these topics.
So thank you a lot. And it's a blessing that we have a green here today, because green energy is like part of your DNA. Maybe also, I mean, you're part of the European Parliament, but you're also part of the party that is part of the German government. Is enough done? Where's the trust?
Well, I think, and it's also, I think, like an answer on the point. Balash, is this your name? I'm sorry if I not spelling this correct, but
perfect. Thank you
made, because I think we need to do both. Of course, we need to incentivize a lot. And this is always like a better solution, right? You are setting the right incentives, and then there is like some development going on because people, business and others are thinking this is the right thing to do. But on the other side, we can also see that in some sectors, this had been tried for a lot of years, and there are the speed has not been as high as we need, and even now where we are dealing with like the climate goals, the energy transition already for a lot of years, but especially from a political perspective, it has really been like a hot topic, like it is now, just for the last 2, 3, or 4 years, and this means that things need to go faster than they would have done if we would have started or have had the same speed already 10 or 15 years ago. And this means that my feeling is that we need to do both. We need incentives at the European level or national level, but we also need regulation in some parts with clear goals. We need like to have the social dimension included, so that we can ensure that everyone will be part of the process, and especially also in transition regions, we can we need to find solutions also for the people living there, more depending on fossil energy. both because the jobs are there or because there is like a high dependency on gas and oil coming from, I don't know, Russia or other parts of the world. So this is what I think is the right thing to do. And this is why I think it's an excellent question, actually, you asked, because it's kickstarting the debate about a lot of different dimensions. And then, of course, I agree the question is not covering every aspect, but I think like to start a debate about those questions, it's quite good. And it's like, this is what we are also dealing with in the parliament, how much regulation, and we're discussing controversially also, right? How much regulation do we need, or do we need more incentives? Is this enough? What kind of role should the EU play? What is like national politics? This is something we are like debating also quite heated in the parliament. And I'm sure if Manfred Weber, who actually was the one who should have been here today, would have been here, you would get different answers from him than you are getting from me. And this is like why I think like it's a very important and good debate. Maybe one or two sentences, Martin, on the German context. This is like maybe a little bit of a freaky, important German debate, maybe not interesting for everybody here, but I fully agree that, of course, on the KfW funding issue, there had been made some mistakes. Basically, the problem we had, like in the start of our government, was like that the funding was not there, and our minister asked for more funding. Then he got the reply from the finance ministry: there is not much money. No money left, and we can't give you more. We cannot give you more money, and then he had to stop it, because elsewhere he would have like had a problem from the financing side. This is like the background for like why it was like this, and he decided to communicate it fast, because he had to stop the program fast because there was no money left. And basically this should have been organized from the former government with a long-term perspective. But what they did afterwards is like to reintroduce some parts of the programs, and they are still working on this, how this also could be it could be erweitert. No, I don't have the word in English. Sorry? Extended. Yeah, extended. So the program is not that, or maybe this program is that, but there will come others. And I know this is like a frustrating situation. It was also like a frustrating situation for us in the government. But I just want to explain that this is like the green perspective, with also like from a party responsible for actually what also is happening on this, because our minister Robert Habeck is in charge when it comes to this.
Well, thank you a lot.
But you can also like send me an email on this, and others can also send me emails on other issues if you are interested. So we can't discuss this in detail here, but I would like to follow up if like there's interest for it.
That's a really great offer, and that's a really great expression of what democracy is about. That's about different opinions and also politicians being available. So thank you so much. We're actually coming to an end of the kickoff and also of this debate, and maybe you're curious how you sorry, that's post-corona, how you voted on the final question. So must the EU become more sovereign and assertive on migration, security and energy policy? Most of you said yes. There was one surprising no. We will not clear up the mystery tonight, and there were 2 absent votes. So, but I think there's a clear voting on that. So yes, this was actually the kickoff of the 6th round of the European HomeParliaments. They're starting in a way right at this moment. And if you want to participate, you can do it over the course of the next 6 to 7 weeks. You just go to the European HomeParliament website or to Open Petition, and there you find this lovely Home Parliament section, and there you can just sign up and meet with your friends, neighbors, student colleagues, and have a good discussion, as we're similar sort of as we were doing it today, but you would hand in the results there. So yeah, I think it's dinner time now, and also some people may want to enjoy the evening sun. I really want to say thank you to everyone for making time for Europe on a sunny Saturday. That isn't always so easy. Thank you, Rasmus, so much again for making time, for being so spontaneous, and for being so open. That's really great. Thank you to everyone who participated from all over the continent. And thank you to the great Pulse of Europe, European HomeParliaments team for making all of this possible. And yeah, maybe Rasmus, you have the final word of the day.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. And as I mentioned already before, please reach out to me if you have some further topics, questions you want to discuss. And of course, I'm also happy to join other events like this and to debate European issues. And what I really like is that you are doing this at a cross-European level with Europeans coming from different parts of Europe, because I really think that this is important. And mostly in all of our countries, we are debating European topics in a national context. And it's much different to do this at the European level because you are getting a lot of more different arguments than if it's like just debated in a national context. And that's what we are doing in the European Parliament. That's why I like to be member of the European Parliament, and that's what you're doing here, and that's really great.
Thank you a lot. And with that great spirit, we get into a nice European evening. Thank you, everyone.
All the best. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.